electrolytes already mixed in them.
Yeah.
As I was saying, there are different kind of concoctions, including some of the sports drinks that already have the electrolytes mixed in them. The sugar and water is in third world setting, like Somalia or Afghanistan or somewhere else, where there's nothing else. So, but in regular setting, I think just getting one of those sports drinks would work, because it will replace the electrolytes as well as retain the water and the electrolytes at the same time. Any of those sports drinks, I'm not going to support any one of them in particular, but Gatorade is one of the well-known, but there are many others as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Gatorade is fine, but usually the way they,
or Pedialyte even.
Pedialyte, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good because it also has, like you said, other micronutrients as well.
Yeah.
Great, guys. Okay, so I'm going to share our slide here, and we can start the discussion. And as always, please put in your comments, your questions in the chat box, and we will get to them as soon as we're done. It's going to be a very short presentation, but I promise you it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to like this. All right, vitamin D and brain health. Now, for a long time, there were a lot of conflicting information about vitamin D being helpful or not, and it wasn't really deemed as something necessary. And in nutrition research, there's always a concern for reductionism, which means that sometimes people tend to go into these rabbit holes and looking at a particular food or a micronutrient for a very long time, and you forget about the bigger picture. You don't look at the interaction of different foods and different micronutrients with each other. And so you highlight something and then you forget about the rest. But we have enough information now to know that vitamin D is actually important. Mm-hmm. So, what is vitamin D, and how does it work? So the vitamin D is essentially, it works as a hormone. The body can't manufacture it, so you actually have to take it exogenously from food or from sunlight, and we'll get to all of the sources of vitamin D in a minute. The body can make vitamin D when sunlight shines on the skin's top layer. We have specific cells that converts, some structural compounds into vitamin D, and this actually goes into our liver and into our kidney, whether it's made on our skin or whether it's ingested from food. It helps us maintain healthy bones. It improves our immune system, our cardiovascular system, as well as our endocrine function. So it's an incredibly important hormone and a compound. As far as our brain is concerned, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I mean, most of us think of vitamin D as just for bones, calcium being absorbed into the bones and maintaining the bone system, but it's actually much more than that.
Oh yeah, very, very extensive. It works extensively.
DNA repair. We're talking about as far as brain and myelination and immune response. In fact, one of its most powerful effects is through what it does with the immune system.
Directly by helping some of these cells, white blood cells, get activated and function better, and indirectly through the creation of our hormones in our body that protects us from infections and inflammation. As far as the brain is concerned, there are nearly 3,000 articles in the medical literature about the effect of vitamin D on brain health. And guess what, guys? I kind of just summarized, I wrote it down in bullet points for you guys, but there's plenty of evidence that suggests that if people tend to have lower vitamin D, it increases their risk for cognitive impairment. So memory is impaired, judgment, decision-making, and multiple domains of cognition is affected. There's even evidence that there is structural changes and damage to the brain, especially parts of the brain that are responsible for encoding memory, like the hippocampus. This actually, it gets damaged. And there is some structural changes to the sulci and the gyri, which are the infoldings of the brain with the lack of vitamin D. It increases the risks for multiple sclerosis, definitely for other types of dementias as well, and Parkinson's disease. So we have these studies from molecular research as well as long-term observational studies where people are followed for decades, and they've seen that if those who have lower vitamin D, they tend to develop more of these brain diseases, chronically speaking.
The relationship, at some other point we'll talk about it, the relationship with MS is very interesting.
Exactly, yes.
Both as far as the fact that we know that MS happens much more frequently the further away you are from the equator, and the direct evidence when people have lower vitamin D, especially at certain age ranges, they have a much higher proclivity for multiple sclerosis.
Absolutely, yes. And the relationship, so the relationship between vitamin D levels, sun exposure, and MS is very interesting, because people who tend to develop multiple sclerosis are usually away from the equator. So there is a hypothesis that it may have to do something with being exposed to sunlight and vitamin D.
Especially at the two ends of the spectrum. You've heard us talk about this quite a bit. The two ends of the spectrum, it sounds worse, but it's not. It's when the brain is developing during childhood. And MS, that specific age differential is 12 years of age. Before 12 years of age, if they lived in a certain area that was far away from equator, their risk of MS goes a lot higher, which tells you, which most people think it speaks to the fact that your epigenetics, your genes susceptibility is not continuous throughout life. You are more susceptible at the beginning of a life for certain pathways and diseases. And then at the other end of the spectrum, as you get older, you become more susceptible. Your needs for vitamins become more. Your needs for, we talked about omega-3, your needs go higher. So be aware that this is not a monosyllabic thing where everybody's at the same level of risk throughout. But that differential tells you a lot.
Absolutely.
So vitamin D is one of those essential vitamins that we have to look at it a lot more in detail, and also in the context of age. And that's important.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that, because it ties into the fact that as we grow older, it's not really absorbed very well in our body as well. So as far as the normal levels are concerned, and these are the numbers that you will see in your doctor's, the lab reports that your doctor does for you. And you'll see that usually it's, it's described as nanograms per milliliters. And the optimal level is between 20 to 40 nanograms per milliliters. But unfortunately, in the United States, 70% of people have less than 30 nanograms per deciliter. And about 10% of people actually have it less than 20. So there's a very large proportion of the population that don't have optimal vitamin D levels. And there are multiple reasons. First and foremost, we're sitting indoors most of the time. One of the strongest sources of vitamin D is exposure to sunlight. And with industrialization and with the kind of lives that we're leading, we're staying indoors most of the time. And so we don't have optimal levels. Second, our diets have changed. Foods are very processed. Although with fortification of food, this has actually gotten better. But over the years, the change in diet has significantly caused low vitamin D levels.
But even in a place like California, sunny California, you would think that the numbers would be better. Actually, when I check my patients all the time as far as vitamin D. And I'm shocked by the number of elderly patients who have low or abnormally low or just low levels of vitamin D. So don't assume just because you're going out or the fact that you're in California that you'll have normal levels. It's good to at least get it checked once every 2 years or so, just to make sure that you're within normal range.
I pulled up my computer just now because while we were reading this, there was a paper that actually showed that people who live in California and Florida could be as vulnerable as any other place in the country, which kind of tells you that, even though there's sunlight, people are actually not really.
Especially as you get older.
Especially as you get older, absolutely. So you want to be somewhere between 20 and 40. What are the sources? Obviously, other than fortified foods, the sun is a very powerful source of vitamin D. And the body can make up to 10,000 international units of vitamin D in just, in just about 15 to 30 minutes of unprotected exposure to sunshine, which essentially means that you actually have to sit in the sun without any sunscreen for your body to make vitamin D. It's very difficult for the body to make it if you're wearing a zinc-based sunscreen on. And
yeah, but that's a double-edged sword as well, because we know the rate of melanoma that's gone up profoundly throughout the world, but especially in the United States, California. So we have to be careful. And so I usually say that, yeah, sun is great. A little bit of sun, the morning walk, that's fantastic.
Yes.
But you be aware of getting foods that are fortified with vitamin D and know your levels.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that. There was this crazy statistics in 2008, very, very prominent, very well-designed study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, showing that as many as 1 billion people around the world were having vitamin D deficiency.
Wow, 1/7 of the world's population.
That's correct. And imagine the diseases that they're exposed to, whether it's cardiovascular, autoimmune, endocrine, brain, and you and I have seen rickets in children in developing countries. How to have normal vitamin D levels? I think the first step is to get tested, know your levels. You have to be able to know what your vitamin D level is once a year. And your physician should be able to get it for you, and you shouldn't pay out of pocket to do that. It's covered under your insurance. Like we mentioned earlier, anything between 20 to 40 is great. Anything less than that, you need to do something about it. Don't shun the sun. 15 to 20 minutes of sunshine without using any sunscreen is sufficient. Like Dean said, I think it's important for us to make sure that you don't increase your risk of cancer. Obviously, we want to stay protected, but exposing yourself to, for 15 minutes won't do any harm to your skin, and you'll get plenty of vitamin D. Your climate.
Exposing yourself to sun.
Yeah, exposing yourself to sun, period. People, so and I think it also depends on the climate.
I'm throwing you off,
I know, you just threw me there, but the climate, it depends on the climate. It also depends on the color of your skin. People with lightly pigmented skin are approximately 5 times more efficient than those with darker skin at synthesizing vitamin D from the sun. So you would probably need a little more sun exposure if you have darker skin. Choose vitamin D rich foods. Now everybody thinks that eggs and meat and certain dairy are great sources of vitamin D. They are, but as we grow older, we have to eat a whole lot of them for that vitamin D to become bioavailable in our body. So make sure that sun should be the first and the foremost source. There's certain mushrooms, and Dean was actually reading about the mushrooms yesterday.
Yeah. So getting back to the meat and other sources, the argument is always there, and we always have this counter argument. Just because something has certain good properties, it doesn't negate their bad properties.
Agreed.
So it's always about that calculus. So be aware of that.
Agreed.
But there are other foods like all the dairy or non-dairy milks, and all of them are fortified with
cereals,
significant
orange juice,
exactly,
all of that.
exactly.
Yeah.
With we're not going to do orange juice, but cereals and soy milk and almond milk and even regular milk, they're all fortified. Mushrooms are a tremendous source of vitamin D, especially UV radiated, which is approved and safe through FDA. Whenever people hear the word irradiated, that gets them worried. No, the mushroom is irradiated, but so there's no radiation, but it actually creates vitamin D, enriches it with vitamin D, and that seems to be a great source as well. I gained tremendous amount of respect for mushrooms. I already like mushrooms because of its texture, but now with all its other properties, it's a fantastic food to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And nowadays, when they grow mushrooms, they try to expose them to sunshine to increase their content of vitamin D. But I think let's go back to what Dean just mentioned. Just because some foods have vitamin D or some compound that may be helpful, or vitamin B12, for example, or choline, for example, it doesn't really necessarily make them healthy, because there's so many other ways of getting it in a more healthier way, avoiding all the harmful substances that come with certain food products. Like, for example, we wouldn't want you to be eating full fat dairy products. Why? Because of the saturated fats, and because of so many other things. So you can eat foods that are fortified with vitamin D, like cereal and a lot of soy milk, and some plant-based yogurts actually are fortified with vitamin D as well. So try to find good ones, and of course mushrooms. And if you guys have access to the box, the pizza mushroom, the portobello pizza mushroom is one of the best ways of getting in a lot of vitamin D in your food.
And that morning walk,
right?
If you're going to do it without suntan, or lotion, anything that blocks UVA, it's better in the morning because the radiation is not as high as in the midday. And you remember, the morning walk is good for exercise, for sleep, for setting the whole pattern of melatonin. And so that's another time, the best time to actually get that walk.
Absolutely. The other way to get vitamin D is through a supplement, and we'll talk about what that essentially means. And then keep on reassessing yourself. Even if you have normal vitamin D, because absorption rates change, like I said earlier, getting yourself checked and reassessed once a year for vitamin D levels is important.
Yeah.
Supplements. Opt for vitamin D if you have to take it, if your vitamin D levels are low. Get vitamin D3, which is cholecalciferol. It's an active form that's more readily absorbable than its vitamin D2 counterpart. So ergocalciferol is the inactive form of vitamin D. Go for vitamin D3. And then depending on your level of deficiency, doctors and experts recommend taking anywhere between 600 to 4,000 international units daily for a target range of being between 30 to 50 nanograms per milliliters. But there's always a concern for toxicity, because these vitamins, they're not always just safe, and they can be absorbed maximally, and your levels will go up very, very high. And these could be detrimental. And there have been studies on them to show that vitamin D and vitamin A and vitamin E and K, which are fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, K, they can actually become toxic very easily because they sit on your adipose tissue, the fat tissue in your body. So doing it under a doctor's supervision and getting your levels checked is very important. Again, making sure that your doctor is aware of some of the other comorbidities. For example, if somebody has a family history of cancer, or if they have had cancer in the past and they're in remission, the dose of vitamin D may be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on your medical history, your family history, your lifestyle, and it shouldn't be taken without a doctor's supervision. And the doctor will make sure that he or she measures other things, other levels, other micronutrient levels before they make a recommendation for you.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Usually the highest requirements are those over age of 70.
Correct. Yes.
And then younger
Absolutely.
individuals. Yeah.
So babies and children, and then elderly need the most monitoring and supplements, because those are the two ends of life when you need it most. All right, well, that was it. Okay, I hope you guys...
When we do the micronutrient talk, we'll get into more detail for all of these micronutrients. And in fact, even some of the biochemical pathways. I think it's helpful to know how they work in the body.
You absolutely. Okay, let's go ahead and answer your questions. So starting with Patricia, how are you? I am well, Patricia. Thank you so much for asking. We're both doing very well. It's been a great week, busy week, but just keeping busy. And Andrea, we answered your question. Nikki says, is there a password to access the meetings? You shouldn't be needing a password, and Nicole will probably help you and send you a message, but you should be able to actually get in without entering any passwords. We let you into the room when you join. So sorry if you had any trouble doing that. Colleen says she didn't need a password. That's great. Sherry says, if optimal is 20 to 40, then why is less than 30 a concern versus less than 20?
This is, again, we want to make sure that we talk about extrapolation and what our beliefs are. And in our case, even our beliefs are based on the data. when it comes to vitamin B12, when it comes to vitamin D, when it comes to some of these other vitamins, as we get older, that range that's provided for the general population, I think that we should be a little, not so much incredulous, but a little weary about taking it as a whole product, as a complete monosyllabic thing. I think our requirements are a little higher as we get older. By older, I mean 50 and above. I'm 50 and above, and so normal range for B12 is 200 to 800 or 900. If anybody comes with a B12 level of 200, and if they're over 50, I say that's too low. Even if they come 300, I think you should be aware of your vitamin B12 levels and supplement or be aware of eating foods that have higher B12. And so because you want to be on the higher side, not on the lower side, because the translation, just because it's in your blood level at a certain amount, doesn't mean it's being used that efficiently as we get older. That's why we always check methylmalonic acid with it, which is an evidence of how it's being used. This is B12. Same thing is for vitamin D. Being on the lower end, being near the 20 or low 20s, is usually not the optimal, especially as we get older. So it's better to be on the higher end. Now, with vitamin D, you can get toxic, so be careful. It's a fat-soluble substance. It's not as toxic as we used to think, because we thought vitamin A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble, so they can actually accumulate and become toxic. We still have to be aware of vitamin D, so don't overdo it. That's why checking your levels makes a difference. And whenever I say that, people bring up the concept that, well, what were we doing when there were these levels, when we couldn't check the levels or we couldn't supplement? Well, we didn't live that long. That's why we can't be magical. We hope to actually cheat the system. We want to live past 30, 40, 50, and not only live past 50, but live past 50 healthfully, vibrantly. And that's going to require some engineering, some awareness of your levels being on the higher end, be it either through supplements or through food. Absolutely. Greater awareness. So that's why we're pushing a little on the higher side for some of these levels.
Absolutely. Great question, Sherry. Thank you. Colleen says, I heard that we need to be at 80 on our labs. I'm not sure the source. 80 nanograms, that's way too high. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's a different unit. I haven't heard of that. Have you?
Yeah, no, that would be too high by these units.
Absolutely. Lonnie said, maybe I missed something, but which vitamin D are we talking about? Vitamin D3. Vitamin D3, the more absorbable and the bioavailable form. I hope that's the answer, Lonnie.
Yeah.
Colleen says, I heard that people with less than 40 were at higher risk of severe COVID symptoms in hospital. I think that was refuted.
Yeah. So the data is not there all there. Less than 40 is, 40 is the higher end of normal.
Right.
So I would think that would not be the case. We know that there's some evidence that vitamin C vitamin C and vitamin D both are related to your immune system. So therefore your response to the COVID situation, but we don't have the data that you need to go super normal levels in the 50s or so to do better. Excessive things are not always good.
Right, absolutely. Colleen says, do you need vitamin K2 with D? Yes, you do, and especially if you're taking vitamin D2.
Yeah.
I think it actually helps with a conversion to a more bioavailable form of vitamin D3.
But usually you shouldn't have any problem having normal amounts of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Nikki says, can monk fruit be used in baking? Yeah, absolutely. To the best of my knowledge, and I haven't, well, no, I actually do bake now. It doesn't really lose its sweetness.
Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry? No, I read the next line. Why, Dean, yeah.
The monk fruit doesn't lose its sweetness when you use it in baking, and it's wonderful. So yes, you can definitely use monk fruit. We made, what did we make the other day? We made some scones. We used some semolina flour and made some really nice scones. And I didn't put a lot of fat in it. I just put a couple of tablespoons of olive oil and some applesauce with semolina flour and monk fruit. And I folded in some fresh blueberries. And it was one of the best scones we've ever had. It was really, really good. We'll share the recipes. I'm recipe testing that one. I'll share it when it's perfect. Okay. Candace says, Dean, why do you say we're not doing oranges.
I wasn't clear. I meant orange juice.
Orange juice, yeah.
We are
trying to stay away from juices.
Juices, because
Yeah.
it takes a beautiful product and leaves you the worst part of it.
Right.
It takes away all the fiber, the nutrients, everything else, and all that's left is, most of it is just sugar.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, oranges are amazing. We love oranges, but yeah, oranges just strips it of all the fiber. Okay, Becky says, how do you feel about biotin? Is it okay to take with other B vitamins? I think it's okay to take biotin. Biotin is actually good for nails and hair, and people who have, a lot of dry skin. Is it absolutely necessary? No, but it won't hurt you if you take it.
But a lot of times when people have these symptoms that Aisha was talking about, brittle nails or hair or skin, one of the first things people look at is biotin levels. Yeah. So and they're quite effective because it's useful for rapid turnaround cells.
That's right.
Even the GI system as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah. We'll go into the more detail on biotin when we get to that section.
Absolutely. Linda, am I missing something if mosquitoes love me? I've been getting a lot of mosquito bites. Oh.
If that was the case, Aisha would be missing. They come to our house and they just attack her and skip me, and I can understand why. I mean, if you're gonna get anybody, you should get Aisha.
I don't want to get that compliment. Well,
yeah. So with mosquitoes, there seems to be, they have a tendency, proclivity for certain people versus others, because of the scent, and so that's the reality of mosquitoes.
I take showers.
Yeah.
No, but it's also because of some people react to it more. So it might sting other individuals, but they don't react to it as much as some others do. For example, I get wheals when I get a mosquito bite. And when Dean gets a mosquito bite, it's just barely a little bump, and then it goes away within a few minutes. So I think his body knows how to react with it and doesn't overreact. While mine overreacts, I'm going to sneeze.
See?
Sorry about that.
Mosquito.
So it probably has to do with that. But no, you're not missing anything. I know that it's very uncomfortable. Just try to put some tea tree oil. They absolutely hate the smell of tea tree oil. Even if you put it around your ankles or wrists and not entire arms, they don't like the smell and they go away. To us, it smells good. So yeah, just a couple of drops of tea tree oil. Andrea says, how much electrolyte drinks should be taken if you are having problems? If you said that, sorry, I missed it.
Oh, so if you're having diarrhea, it depends on the amount of diarrhea, right? If you're just drinking or you're just losing liquids continuously, the more the better, because remember, one of the more common reasons for going to the hospital and getting IV fluids is because of people having diarrhea.
Yeah.
So if you're having complete loose fluids and you're not able to retain any fluids and you're going to the bathroom multiple times a day, don't worry about quantity. Just keep drinking as much as possible.
Right.
There are times that you can actually become toxic with water. There is a psychological problem where people drink so much water that they get they dilute their blood and sodium, so they get hyponatremia. That's extremely rare, and especially with drinks like this, which have electrolytes in them, so you're not diluting.
Yeah.
That's not going to be a problem. So if you're having diarrhea or loose stools that are significant, whatever that might be, I mean, there is a way to quantify if somebody wants to know it. Then don't worry about how much. Just keep drinking.
Yeah, absolutely. You shouldn't. Your body will adjust. So you're not going to harm yourself. Gail says, I'm a sandwich eater. Me too, Gail. At lunch, and I love my Best Foods mayonnaise. I know I need to make a change to something healthier. What may I use that will still satisfy my taste buds for mayo? Well, you have a lot of choices, and you have, from the most unprocessed form to maybe perhaps a little bit of processed forms. Now, mayonnaise is probably one of the most processed fatty foods out there, and it has bad fats for the most part because they use egg yolks. And they also use, most of the time, it's a clear vegetable oil like canola or sunflower or safflower oil mixed with it, and it's emulsified. So the oil and the protein from the eggs are emulsified, and you get a cream like this. A great replacement, I think, would be if you can't if you really, really like the taste of your mayonnaise, buying some plant-based mayonnaise may be better because most of them are using, they use tofu or soy proteins with oil. But better than that is making something at home. And yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, an advertisement for you right now. So right now, lunchtime, we had a morning session. We had to get some talk ready for ACLM, American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We were, and afterwards, we quickly had to create a lunch. And there are some sweet potatoes and some salad that was a little 2 days old salad. Yeah,
and grab something from the refrigerator.
And as healthy as sweet potatoes are, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm going to be honest. I'm always honest about things I don't like. Aisha actually gets uncomfortable when I say that because it's a powerful food. It's a great food.
It's a great food.
Well, she quickly, together we quickly made this cream, which was exactly like mayo.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing. It gave this 2-day-old salad and this sweet potato a life that it didn't possess before.
It was an almond chipotle sauce, and the recipe is in the box, but that's like our go-to sauce. I put a cup of almonds with some garlic, a chipotle pepper, you know, the ones that are found in cans, really hot and spicy, maybe 2 or 3 limes, a little bit of salt and some nutritional yeast to give it a cheesy flavor, and some water. And I blended it, and it's this beautiful creamy sauce that goes on top of your greens.
It's absolutely amazing, especially with that heat.
Yeah.
If you like the heat. If you don't, you can get less chipotle.
Right.
And then the kids love your creamy cheese
exactly
sauce.
The white sauce,
which
sauce actually serves as mayo. So Gail, what I do is I make this white sauce from cashews. I soak cashews for an hour in hot water or maybe even overnight. And then I blend it with a little bit of apple cider vinegar, some salt, some herbs, water, lemon to kind of give it some tang. And depending on what consistency you wanted, do you want it like a dressing, you add more water. If you want a little thicker, you put less water. And that becomes a beautiful spread, just like mayonnaise. But it is made out of these amazing, incredible fats. It's delicious. And you will never miss the taste of mayonnaise. So I will actually have Nicole put that recipe in the folder so you can have access to it. But yeah, and then an easy way of switching mayonnaise is just using avocados. You just break half an avocado, smear it on your bread, put some lemon, pepper, maybe even a little bit of red peppers, crushed red peppers on it to kind of give it a kick. I don't know. I eat a lot of spicy food, so if you don't like spicy,
it's your own experimentation. Yeah, exactly. If you have the base, then you can experiment with heat, with different kind of herbs and spices. Right. Depending. So the fun part is the experimentation.
Exactly, and it's delicious and it's amazingly healthy. And it serves as a great base for your sandwich. Yeah. So try them and tell me what you think. But yeah, I look forward to you making that white sauce. All right. And Noelle says, I had previously thought dairy was to be avoided on an anti-inflammatory diet. This week, I read an article that said this was not the case. Thanks for your thoughts. Okay, I'm actually pulling it up. But oh yeah, I think I read this. It was on Very Well. Studies confirm that dairy does not cause inflammation. I read this. Did you read this, Dean?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so basically there's in this study, they're saying that the amount of nutrients that are available in milk basically are more important than the effect of saturated fats and casein and whey in them. Honestly, Noelle, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to hear a lot of contradictory studies coming up about something that has been confirmed to be unhealthy or healthy on a day-to-day basis. It just depends on the quality of the data, the researchers' previous studies and their proclivities, their understanding of dietary pattern and not a specific food. So dairy has been one of those gray zones where you see some studies saying, yeah, it's not that bad. And then you see other studies that say, no, it's really bad, especially because of the casein and the saturated fats.
We're all about data and adapting the data. I mean, the data on casein, we're a little, stepping back a little bit, looking at it, studying it more, seeing how valid it is and how powerful it is. But the data on saturated fat, no matter how they dispute it with whatever contorted, it's there. Now, with every food, now this is interesting that you bring this because I was just doing some work on lectins, this whole new thing that they've brought up. Lectins are these proteins that are told by some people to be bad for you.
Yeah.
You know, the things that are found in nightshades
And beans.
and other things that are bad for you. So, and lo and behold, they're true. Some of them can be bad for you, but the quantity found in foods is so little that it's usually not.
Right.
And in the other foods where it is higher level, like in beans, just simple processing, just simple washing and cooking, just cooking, not even pressure cooking,
soaking.
Or soaking. For example, red kidney beans have the highest level. By just cooking it, it goes from 20,000 units, whatever the international units for lectins are, to 0 to 200 units. I mean, that's the level difference. But let's say that you still retain some of the lectins. In that case, the benefit and cost is so different that for people to miss out on beans, which is the healthiest food, in fact, the one food that's found in all blue zones and in all the healthy places, beans. It doesn't make sense. So I'll take it one step even further. So just the act of eating is an oxidative process. I mean, when we eat, we make the DNA turn over. You're actually aging the cell. There's oxidation. So by that measure, even any eating is bad. But we make a calculus that some eating is good because we need energy and we need to survive. And then some of the foods we eat have more benefit than harm. Within that calculus, plant-based is good and saturated fat is bad and sugar and processed food is bad. And a lot of foods have some of each, but the net is beneficial.
Yeah.
In this case, with dairy, the saturated fat and other products in it, as well as the fact that if it's coming from factory, is way worse than possibly some micronutrients that you might find in it, because you can get that in other places.
Right.
That's the kind of calculus we're doing as nutritionists every day. It's not a binary math. It's good, bad. It's not that way. Some foods are way on the side of good. Beans, despite the lectins, are way on the side of good.
Right.
I mean, there shouldn't even be a dispute. And others are more on the side of bad. So we say that falls. That's why Aisha's graph, she actually created a graph where good foods and bad foods, red, green, and red, yellow, and green.
Harmful, neutral, and beneficial.
And by the way, even with the second book, with the new data, we adjusted those numbers.
Yeah.
As scientists, you have to adjust. I mean, we said to the best of our knowledge.
Yeah.
It's a spectrum of good and bad.
So as far as milk is concerned, saturated fat is still a problem, and it will always be. I mean, there's just tremendous amount of data that shows that you should minimize your saturated fat intake as much as possible, because it's been associated with Alzheimer's disease, with heart disease, with cancer, and even if you don't have any of these diseases, it actually causes inflammation in the brain and it destroys the connections between the cells. As far as casein is concerned, we're not sure about that. There is a lot of discrepancy in the data so far. I hope that helps. That was a very long-winded answer.
My fault. That was my
no.
My
to relatively straightforward question. Linda says, I put avocado on my sandwiches instead of mayo. It's great. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we even have avocado sandwiches for breakfast sometimes. The kids love them. Patricia says, unfortunately, I've not been keeping up with all the practices. I'm beginning to feel like I'm not contributing and I'm getting discouraged. Please help my thinking. I'm sorry to hear that, Patricia.
Well, here's the thing. The first part of thinking starts by participating. So you're here.
Yeah.
And it's a journey. And we fail ourselves by what is the one thing I say? Why do we fail? False perfection.
False perfection. That's
false
right.
perfection. So
there were others too that I thought about.
Yeah. So false perfection is one of the main reasons we fail behavior. And I'm a behaviorist, so. Get rid of that false belief. And each of us are in different range of spectrum as far as that belief system.
Right.
Some of us are very laid back with things. Like me, I'm like, okay, I failed. It's okay.
Moving on.
I'm moving on. I've done so many other good things that I move on. And others are much more rigid on themselves. And actually, that's a false perfection. It's a method of procrastination and failure. You're doing great. You're here. Even if you're not doing any of the neuro stuff, you're here. The key is to start with one and value that one behavior as a contributor. If you're doing all or none in your head, that if I'm not doing all of it or most of it or a lot of it, I'm not really succeeding, then you actually fail yourself. Don't worry about the binary nature, all or none or most or some. One behavior is your success.
Mm.
One behavior. If you get rid of sugar, that's a profound amount of success. I'm going to use an arbitrary number. I hate using arbitrary. By just eliminating sugars, you've just reduced your chance of, cancers and dementia by 10 to 20%. Isn't that by itself enough? So that's one act.
Mm-hmm.
If you just walked, 4 days a week, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
brisk walk,
Yeah.
you just reduce your chance of dementia by 45%.
Right.
Isn't that enough? So get rid of this thought process that, oh, you're not contributing. You're here, you're contributing. And every time you start a new process, that's a benefit.
Right.
You could actually fail yourself and then restart. That's a benefit. But the key is not to make it an all or none, because then no matter how driven you are, you will fail yourself, because none of us are able to achieve all of the activities. None of us.
Agreed.
So that's my short answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Patricia says, as far as in the kitchen goes, she's been sticking more to chicken as her protein. What else can I eat? Where's your recipe for your mayo? I haven't put the mayo recipe as of yet. I will definitely send it to you. And Patricia, don't worry about it. Just do your best. I mean, if you want to eat your chicken for protein, that's fine. But you can add some other recipes. You can eat a lot of beans. You can add some tempeh or tofu, and we'd be happy to send you some recipes.
But
yeah,
delineate your successes clearly, because if it's not clear success, even if it's one success, if it's amorphous, you don't feel the success. Even though you might be doing a lot of small elements, you will not see the success. So if you're making a behavior change, if you're codifying, if you're inculcating a behavior change, make sure that you mark it, you're clear about it.
Yeah.
I actually intended to reduce sugar by 50%.
Right.
I was able to do it. That's a success. But if you're just making changes and you're never able to, measure it or celebrate the successes according to a time, no matter how much you've done, you actually fail yourself eventually.
Exactly.
Because ultimately we're driven by our successes, that feeling, that dopamine, that, okay, I made my mind to do X and I was able to do X, as small as it might be. So please mark your behaviors that you're going to do, make them achievable, and you're achieving, and celebrate them. And then put your flag on there and maintain that before you go to something else.
Absolutely. Beautifully stated, Dean. I love that. Okay, Lonnie says, I use avocados instead of mayo dressing or cream cheese. Yum. Oh, I love avocados. Thank goodness for avocados. Imagine if avocados were unhealthy. That would be a sad life.
Yeah.
Gina says, can you remind those who haven't turned in our lab results, to whom do we send? So we have our fabulous research coordinator, Nicole.
Tremendous, amazing, fabulous,
Phenomenal.
Superstar.
Nicole Lundy. So Nicole, NICOLE Lundy, LUNDE @bchd.org. She'll put her email in the chat box and you can send it to her. She collects everything. And
again, although we've said this many times, if you need a letter from us for your doctor, we have one already ready for you to use to give to your own doctor.
Absolutely. Linda says, I've heard that higher levels like 80 nanograms on early Sunday radio shows. Oh, she's talking about vitamin D levels.
Yeah.
80 is too high.
Yeah.
80 is very, very high. I'll check again, but as far as the American Medical Association and the American Neurology Academy is concerned, the higher level is the one that we showed you. So 20 to 50 at most. Alani says AARP had the cashew recipe last month. Really? AARP? That's awesome.
They're stealing our program. We actually had a great meeting with their leadership.
I'm really happy
wants to
that
work with us.
Yeah.
Research. Yeah.
I'm happy that they're introducing a lot of plant-based foods. It makes me really happy to see that they're in line with what the evidence is showing. Okay, Gail said, I'll start with avocado in lieu of mayo. I love spice too. Yes. I'm looking forward to seeing the cashew sauce in the folder. Thanks, you're making a healthy lifestyle easier for me. Of course, I'll definitely send it to Nicole today and should be available.
The whole point is for it to be so easy that it's second nature.
Yeah.
You also have some sauces with avocado. So it's not just avocado, but avocado changed into, you know, so you can share that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly,
But we can't give them all at once, then, you know.
no, I'll give all of them at once.
Okay.
That's fine. That's just my family. But yeah, I think the key is to really understand what flavors you like. I
Yes.
think the key flavors for a good sauce, whether it's a mayo or any dressing, is a combination of, well, actually three: lemon, garlic, and salt. Just takes it to another level. So your base can be tofu, your base can be almonds, it can be cashews, it could be avocados. But adding those elements actually, you know, gives it this new life.
And I know you mean this. You said this. Be judicious with salt.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
you can use other herbs and spices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pinch
Yes.
of salt. Yeah. Okay. Becky says, what are the best protein powders for smoothies? Whey, casein, etc. I would stay away from whey and casein, Becky. It's way too processed, and whey is way too. I would go with either pea protein. Pea protein is great. It's neutral. It doesn't have a funny taste, and it's very healthy. And it has a lot of fiber too, so you get a lot of fiber with it too. Lonnie says, I think the problem with science and supplements is that it depends on different body types, so it's not hard, repeatable scientific evidence. What do you think? Absolutely.
But I want to make sure that this doesn't become a point of failure. So a lot of times people say the science is not perfect, so therefore throw it out. Well, the science is not perfect as far as specific range, but the general range, we're pretty good with that as far as general range is concerned. The specifics of where within that range you would want to be, really, you're right. It depends on, we're learning this, the epigenetics of things, where how your genes work, what kind of genes you have, and those genes, how they reflect on your metabolism and how your liver metabolizes things and how your kidney, because remember, vitamin D has two processes. It's hydroxylated first in the kidney in position 1, and then hydroxylated again in the liver. Position 25, and then there's more processing. All of that depends on your genetics. You're absolutely right, and some people are fast processors, and others slow processors when it comes to the liver function. So yeah, we are going to be better at that, at that level of detail of individualization, personalization. But at this point, the general ranges work, and you can live with it instead of just throwing it away.
Absolutely. Okay. Nicole sent a message to everyone saying all food labs, blood tests, lab tests, etc., can be sent to me at nicole.lundy@bchd.org. So you can see that that email in the chat box. Patricia says, aside from dairy, what are other big saturated fat, quote unquote, danger foods?
Yeah.
So the saturated fat foods that are high in saturated fats are most animal products. So meat, chicken. People think that white meat may have less bad fats compared to red meats, but it's actually comparable. And they've even done studies on people who eat red meat and chicken, and their cholesterol levels rise at the same rate. And because people eat a lot more chicken than red meat, so they're actually consuming more saturated fats. The other sources are tropical fats.
Yeah.
So coconut oil, palm oil, and palm oil is usually mixed in a lot of peanut butter. So when you're buying peanut butter, just check the label and make sure that it doesn't have palm oil. Now there are a lot of them that don't, that they only have the peanut oils mixed in them. So those are the main sources of saturated fats. Difna says, I was just diagnosed with osteoporosis and hyperthyroidism. My endocrinologist wants me to take Fosamax or Reclass. I'm trying exercise and diet also, but they tell me to avoid beans. I'm totally plant-based, no dairy, eggs, etc. Why no beans? Hyperparathyroidism, so no calcium supplements. I hate to take medication, but it seems unavoidable.
No, that's fine. I mean, we always say we're not against medicine. There are times in your life where you need some medicine,
right?
Especially if your bones are in a situation where you can have dire effects, absolutely temporarily, and then exercise will help significantly. I am somewhat incredulous about the bean thing. We're on top of all the data and all the research, so there isn't any strong data to speak to that, but if you speak with your doctor and he or she has a good evidence, please share it with us. We are not dogmatic, we're open to data, but we've looked at the data and there's no such strong data to speak to it.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of why they asked you to not take beans. Could potentially be because it interact with Reclast, your medication. Beans sometimes have phytates, which are insoluble compounds and insoluble complex carbohydrates that may react with some of your medication. But you know, I'm going to take a look at it and I'll let you know. I know that it doesn't react with Fosamax, and I do know that it doesn't, you know, people who have thyroid issues shouldn't stop eating beans at all. So, but as far as Reclast is concerned, I'll check it for you and I'll let you know. We'll send you an email.
I'm just looking at an article. That's exactly right.
Phytates?
The phytates, yeah.
Okay.
Phytates. Yeah, but the data is, yeah. So that's why they said that.
So the phytates in beans actually prevent the absorption of calcium, but to be honest with you, it's not that, it's not a you know, as big of a deal as people think it is. So I'll get back to you on that. Linda says, I'm looking at my lab results from last year. My vitamin D is 39 and the range, oops. And
in fact, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
No, I was,
okay.
My head was somewhere else.
So maybe I'll answer Linda's question first,
yeah.
And then we can go back to that. I'm looking at my lab results from last year. My vitamin D is 39 and the range shows from 20 to 50, certainly not 80. Good, that's great. Lonnie says Himalayan salt's better. Oh, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Lonnie says, is Himalayan salt better, less sodium? It's barely less than the regular salt. So, you know, the difference is very, very small.
And remember, why are you taking the salt? You're taking it for the taste. So if the taste is diluted, then you're going to need more of it. So then you end up with the same amount, but as far as sodium is concerned. So just realize that. As far as this article actually says that, I'll read it specifically, phytates can interfere with body's ability to absorb calcium to some extent. That also is found in beans. Because beans are rich in magnesium, fiber, and other nutrients, making them otherwise good for osteoporosis prevention and your health overall, you needn't avoid them altogether. So it's important to kind of take all of that into consideration. But at the end of the day, we can't give you medical advice. Your doctor is starting you on this medication. You have to talk to your doctor as far as the medication and its relationship with your health.
Absolutely.
We're just giving you general advice.
Absolutely. Okay, Dimple says, thanks. That's it. Phytates. Yeah, absolutely. Lonnie says, absolutely, regarding chicken. I stopped eating red meat in 1968, but since this study, I stopped the chicken breast and turkey breast, minimized cheese, added more beans. Cholesterol, triglycerides are normal for the first time in years, plummeted. Her cholesterol is 159. Yay, that's awesome, Lonnie. That's amazing. That's incredible.
Those numbers, I want you to kind of focus on those numbers. Those numbers are not just, those reflect the amount of damage that's not being done to your microvasculature in your brain. I mean, on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis. So that's why we don't want to push these ideas too hard, because it's an interaction, but they matter. That's how significant it is. So that's wonderful to hear that.
Oh my God, that made my day. That's amazing.
Yes.
Patricia says, thank you, Dean. Thank you for your comments. Yes, I'm big on perfection. You really help me think differently. Hugs to you.
Anytime. I'm a behavior well, I hate the word motivation, but I want to make sure that I help people, give them the tools to be able to achieve whatever is in front of them. Without that, we're just throwing data at you. Yeah. Look at this. We're throwing numbers, calcium of this, sodium of this, and forget. That's one level, which is we have to know what we should change and where's the data coming from, because there's so much noise. We just spoke about some of the noise out there. But once we've all agreed on this, the source and the type of data, the next step is, okay, how do we make it happen in people's lives?
Right.
That's been harder than anything else.
Absolutely.
Right now, we gave a talk to American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which will go out in a couple of weeks, I guess, as a keynote speech. And there are all these doctors, I'm not putting them down, lifestyle doctors talking about this, and then now a new doctor who's not even a neurologist talking about preventing Alzheimer's, reversing Alzheimer's. He's never ever in his life seen Alzheimer's, but yet he sees himself in a position to make a bombastic statement like that. First, it's wrong. Reversing fulminant Alzheimer's has never been proven. Second of all, the more important thing is, how do you make people achieve behavior change?
Right.
Not just go through a program, but to inculcate it in their life, not feeling as if they're deprived, that they're empowered, and the fact that every change they're making, they're actually completely changing their life.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're one of the reasons, so I'm belaboring that point, is because of this. One of the main reasons we are here is, of course, the data, the information, the tools. But the bigger reason is, for 3 years, we might annoy you at times, more me than her, but just being there to give you reinforcement, tools of behavior change, and truly making the change in your life. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you so much. Okay, and if that's what I understand, I will. Well, that was it for today. I think I went over all of the questions. I'm just kind of scrolling back up and down to see if I missed anything, but these were amazing questions, guys. Thank you so much for asking them, and for all the things that you're sharing with us. I will end it here.
Yes.
And we will definitely see you guys next week. Next Monday, we have a session, but the next Friday, we have another talk. Again, if there's anything specific that you have questions about, any problems, please don't hesitate to share it with us. We're family. I would be happy to get on the phone with you guys and help you in any way I can. We want to be there for you to make this easy and a pleasurable experience. With that, I bid you guys a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys soon.
Have a great weekend.